Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. Hello everyone, and welcome to Wealth Pathways, the Affluence Science Insights Podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm your host, Marie Stella, coming to your ears from Naarm, Melbourne, Australia. Let's learn together.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the show. Today we will be diving into the basics of cryptocurrencies. It is a word that many of us hear and don't think much about because we don't really know what they entail, and yet we know that there is a whole industry and many people around it. So what are cryptocurrencies really? So joining us today is Dr. Dimitrios Salampasis to shed light on this somewhat intimidating topic. Dimitrios has an interdisciplinary background with exposure to international and multicultural environments in the private and public sectors, academia, international organizations, nonprofit and military, adds expert advisory skills, diplomatic and political acumen with a unique ability to connect, actively engage, inspire, and influence domestic and international C-level stakeholders. He offers deep domain expertise, innovative thinking, knowledge assets, strategic analysis, and a global professional network, along with research, advocacy, and training skills. Dimitrios publishes in peer-reviewed journals and books, is an international sought-after keynote speaker with a strong international media presence, and has created Australia's first postgraduate FinTech course. So, with all that in mind, welcome to the show, Dimitrios.
Thank you.
I would love it if you could start off by telling us a bit about your background. What compelled you to pursue emerging technologies and FinTech?
So thank you so much for the kind invitation to join you today. Probably you know that I'm an associate professor of emerging technologies and FinTech, working at Swinburne University, where I also lead the FinTech capability. As you mentioned, I come from a bit of a multidisciplinary background in terms of the fact that the foundation of my studies was political and social sciences, and then pivoted to business and innovation, and then pivoted to emerging technologies. And this kind of multidisciplinarity was very interesting because it allowed me to immerse myself. And what I find fascinating is to be able to connect disciplines and domains which normally would be totally disconnected and totally fragmented. What really fascinated me in the world of FinTech, because I started with FinTech and then deep dive more into the emerging tech, it all started back in 2011 while working in the private sector back in Luxembourg. What really fascinated me is this kind of blend. So you've got a very established domain, which is finance and financial services. And then you've got all these emerging frontier, cutting edge technologies that promise too many things. They promise disruption, they promise transformation. What really fascinated me was to see, okay, what is actually behind and what is really this kind of marriage? And my approach into this is bringing some sort of a generalistic approach around, okay, we have a cutting edge technology, and in this case is blockchain or crypto or quantum or AI and all that. It's great, but what does it actually mean for business? What does it actually mean for society? What kind of hidden questions are out there? And of course, connecting, with domains such as geopolitics, such as societal, environmental, ESG, ethics. So these would be, let's say, more of the hidden elements that in the past wouldn't receive much attention, but now they receive a lot of attention. And yes, the empirical setting is financial services, but again, the premise is business, strategy, innovation, and technology.
Yeah. Interesting. Great. Well, that's a really good dive into your background and where you've come from. And that's really interesting. So my next question for you, which is one that I definitely need answered just for myself, is how would you explain cryptocurrency to a 5-year-old?
So normally when we picture money, we picture them in a piggy bank. We picture them in a bank. We picture them in a wallet. However, imagine having some sort of a magic money, which is called crypto coins. And basically, these crypto coins, you can't see them because basically they live on your computer or on your phone. So you can't go and break your piggy bank or, open it up to take them out there.
Okay.
Now, when you want to give a coin, this kind of crypto coin, to your friend, to your mom, to anyone, you would normally do what? You ask probably your parents to go to the bank and help you get that. But in that case, that's not happening because the computer will do that for you. And basically, every time someone sends a coin using the computer, a lot of other computers do make sure that this is done in a safe way, it is done in a fair way, and also it is done in a way that the transaction happens once and is not copied.
Okay.
So basically making sure that crypto is like an invisible computer money that robots keep it safe. Let's put it that way.
Robots keep it safe.
Yeah.
I like that. Oh, that's fun. So before we dive more deeply into the topic, we'd like to get to know you a little bit better. So I just have a few questions. First of all, what do you like to do in your spare time?
I like reading a lot, and reading not necessarily only for my work, but reading a lot of literature, novels. I try to write a little bit, but I must say I haven't published in that. I mean, I've published books, but professionally, not into the literature or the novels. I like swimming, going out with friends, traveling, and I like to travel as much as I can because immersing myself into absorbing different experiences, different pictures, visiting different places is absolutely phenomenal. I'm very enthusiastic about classical music and opera, and also galleries, museums, but also staying at home, reading or watching TV or listening to music, or even just doing nothing, just relaxing at home. It's also very, very, very important.
Yeah.
Basically, and one of the things that I try to do also when you start getting a bit older, I'm now at the age of 43, so trying also to find oasis of non-digital, basically trying to find moments where I'm just with a physical copy of a book, or not having my phone next to me or checking or anything like that, which is something that I value quite a lot. It's not easy because we live in the era of full digitalization, but having this kind of oasis, or even go for a walk without your phone or without your Apple Watch or anything, that's also something really nice as well.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I like to go for a walk and just not look at anything. I like that time away as well, and I appreciate what you said about music as well. I can definitely appreciate that. You mentioned books. Do you have a favorite book or something you'd like to recommend?
I wouldn't say look, I've got lots of books. Recently, over the past few years, I've been really fascinated with mystery books and crimes, but in particularly the ones which are related to forensics anthropology, basically solving crimes and mysteries, looking at bones, looking at these kind of elements and that kind of mystery that it creates. I'm very keen also on Nordic crime literature, Iceland, Norway, these kind of authors. They bring a bit of a darkness side, but they're very also clever. But definitely also, mainstream authors, classicals, I really like a lot, and, detective stories and all that, which I've been reading for a very long time.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. As somebody I studied archaeology actually at uni, and so I can appreciate the forensics. That's really cool.
Yes.
Are you listening to any podcasts at the moment?
Well, most of the podcasts that I listen are related to my work. So definitely from think tanks or from big universities or from global organizations.
Yep.
I'm mostly interested in current affairs, global affairs, geopolitics, trying to understand key topics that are happening around the globe. I don't really have a specific one to recommend, but definitely I would say the mainstream from, let's say, US universities or European universities, big media or newspapers. These are the ones that I find fascinating. But sometimes I also dig into more, alternative ones, depending on what I'm looking for. Because also, as a researcher, you dig into areas and you try to understand and also try to always see, okay, that's not the single view. Let's find another view. Let's look into some other side of things. So having this kind of let's say, triangulation and cross referencing of different elements is very intriguing as well.
Yeah, that's great. And do you have a role model, either in your personal or professional life, someone you look up to?
Um, I'll be a bit biased, but my role model is actually Socrates. The main reason, well, apart from the fact that he's Greek, he was in ancient Greece and all that, I think I really loved his way of creating knowledge, but also his way of allowing other people to immerse in his thinking. And basically the way that she's always said, okay, let's start with knowing nothing. Let's build this from scratch.
Yeah.
These are some things that resonate with me very well. And I think now that we live in times where information is so abundant, where things are changing in milliseconds, having this kind of approach of starting with things that you don't know or you think you don't know, or even starting with things that you think you know but you don't know, this kind of philosophical discourse, I find it very fascinating.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Philosophical discourse is really fun, and also something I tapped into at uni a little bit. So I love it when people bring it up outside of the academic setting, I suppose. My last question to get to know you is there a course or a class that has inspired you? Maybe even one that you've taught to other people?
Right. To be honest with you, as I told you, my main degree in my bachelor was in public administration and political sciences, and then gradually pivoted to innovation, entrepreneurship, and business. When I was doing my master's in entrepreneurship and innovation in Luxembourg, there was a class taught by two fantastic professors from Switzerland. It was all around innovation management and strategy, and that actually was really inspirational for me to start digging further into that. And that then made me also proceed with a PhD later on to work in this field. And also, I must say, because I came to academia very late. Basically, I came from the back door. So the transition was from the private sector. Basically, what I do in my classes, I always going to bring this kind of applied approach into whatever we teach.
Yeah.
And certainly the topics that I teach, it's a really fertile ground for this kind of applicability.
Right. Yeah.
So when we created the FinTech capability, which started with a Master of FinTech, we were actually the first in Australia to do that. Really, it was really a ground that allowed to bring different elements, talk about things that nobody else was talking. For example, I remember, and even now I've got a unit where a couple of modules are in relation to quantum computing. When you bring, let's say, the quantum physics, the quantum mechanics, but translate it for business leaders, it's really fascinating to see that people initially, they get so scared because they say, oh my God, I'm studying finance, but now I'm doing quantum computing. But then the way you teach it, the way you try to interpret, and that's what I love about my job, is to be able to connect fragmented stakeholders and disciplines, but also allowing different stakeholders to start talking. Sometimes I make the analogy, how about you just bring a banker and a hacker to sit on the same table and start talking? I'm sure there's going to be commonalities, but probably you need some sort of an interpreter to initiate this kind of connection and build this common vocabulary. And I think what I love about the way that I teach is exactly this one, to create a common vocabulary and allow people to see that there is another type of version beyond the silo-driven disciplines that we all are in.
That's fascinating. No, that's a great answer to that question. So in depth. So now we're going to get into our more in-depth questions. So for starters, for this podcast, we like to just define a few terms that might come up as we go. So what would your definition be for affluence?
Right. Again, I think from a context point of view, when you hear the word affluent, you think about wealth. You think about abundance of resources, you think about materials, goods, and all that. However, I think there is another lens there, which is more around, let's say, the prosperity, around the ability to afford, the ability to access, and you can access education, healthcare, travel. It's also about freedom. I think basically being financial, not having any financial stress or financial constraints, and also status. I think affluence is also about status, to be able, to have some certain social prestige or, recognition. So I think, and also currently I've heard also the term of time affluence, basically having time to do things that you enjoy. So I think, yes, I would say the premise is the wealth and the abundance of resources, but definitely there are other areas such as access, freedom, status, and ability to do things in the way you want to do.
Yeah. No, that's fascinating. And secondly, how would you define cryptocurrencies, but to an adult?
Okay. Now, in order to define a cryptocurrency, I think we need to take a small step back.
Sure.
Normally, when we talk about money, we know the money that exists in the form of a physical cash, like your banknote or your coins. And basically, when you think about money, you think about a bank, or you think about, a vault, or you think about a case where you put cash and all that. Or you also think about credit cards and all this digital money. Now, one of the key premises behind that is that this type of money is controlled and regulated by central banks. So basically, there is a whole premise behind around, economic policies, around monetary policies. So basically, rules in terms of how this is done, what is allowed, who is allowed to do what, and basically how you can access your money. And in any case, the custodians of this trust, basically central banks, and also to be able to have money, you need a job, first of all. And secondly, you need a bank which actually is the provider of financial services. And if you have money, you have a savings account, you probably have, a mortgage, you would have credit cards, you would have ability to access this service and get cash or, pay with your credit cards and so on. But again, all these are controlled by central banks and monetary policy.
Okay.
What crypto does, basically crypto is a virtual currency or a digital asset, let's put it that way. So it doesn't exist in reality. You don't see it, you can't feel it, you can't see it. The difference here is that the foundation here is decentralization. And basically what happens here is that the whole infrastructure, and I'm keeping it at a very high level, is basically driven by computers and code. That also means that the governance around crypto at a very high level is independent to what governments, monetary policy, central banks have. And also what it does is that it allows you to have access to crypto without having a central authority as an intermediate. So basically it's what we call a peer-to-peer, or a direct relationship with a particular network that basically would be able to give you access to that. So it's digital only, so it exists only online. It's decentralized, and this is where blockchain technology comes as the technological foundation behind that, because at the very high level, there is no entity controlling anything. And also, the transactions that are happening on the blockchain are distributed, so they are not dependent on a single entity or a single place in time. And also it's secure and transparent, because there is no single point of failure.
Right.
I'm sure you've heard about Bitcoin. I'm sure you've heard about Ethereum. There are differences, but in principle, they're all cryptocurrencies.
Okay.
And basically, people would use cryptocurrencies mainly as investments. They would use them as a medium of exchange. They would use them as experiment across different things. It's a digital asset, but also not all digital assets are cryptocurrencies. So we have to make also that kind of definition as well. So basically, if you think about an NFT, or if you think, let's say, about a tokenized asset, and again, we can talk about all that, these are digital assets, but they're not treated as cryptocurrencies.
Right.
However, I must say, still, definition-wise, things are a bit blurry. But if we put it in that sense that all cryptocurrencies are digital assets, but not all digital assets are cryptocurrencies.
No, that's very helpful. I feel like a lot of people would have heard of NFTs and be interested about that as well, since when they sort of first came out, it was a very big discussion point for people from all sorts of places.
And also, we need to say that despite the fact that this technology exists for a very long time, the boom happened back in 2009 with the Satoshi Nakamoto's paper, where there was the first discussion about Bitcoin. It also emerged because of the global financial crisis as an alternative means of a financial system that it would be driven by code and algorithm rather than being driven by monetary policy and central banks and governments.
Interesting. And how would you describe, therefore, the relationship between cryptocurrencies and affluence?
If I could use two words, I would say dynamic, but also complex. Look, what we have seen so far, and I think this is one of the main pathogens and one of the main reasons why the trust around crypto and also the brand deficit of crypto is the fact that people associate crypto with something that they can become rich very quickly. And we have seen that a lot. So, and it's true. I mean, there has been cases in the past that people got really, really rich about that. Because again, it doesn't operate within the conventional financial world. So it doesn't follow the rules, which it's a double-edged sword, basically. On the one hand, it gives you the freedom to do whatever you want. But on the other hand, let's not forget that the moment you consider this as money or you consider it a financial transaction, it should be regulated.
Yeah.
And this is also where the problem is. Because of the lack of regulation, people think that basically they can replicate a financial infrastructure and a financial world via code, but that's not how things work. And we have seen it also a lot with people losing money, with scams, we can talk about all that later on.
Definitely.
And also the massive volatility. Basically, you can see, let's say, Bitcoin being at this number of value today, and tomorrow might be higher, might be lower. So you can't really predict, because there is also the susceptibility around the externalities, I would say.
Sure.
Another thing I think it's interesting here is that crypto has allowed access. And I think access is very critical because let's not forget that there is numerous populations around the globe that they don't have access to financial services. Like, we take it for granted here in Australia or in developed countries, but there are lots of populations that they don't have basic access to financial services.
Okay.
Now, is crypto a solution? For many, they think that financial inclusion is one of the key advantages of crypto. I tend to agree, however, there is a bit of again, another philosophical discourse there. But definitely, I think the ability to access, the ability to experiment, the ability to do things without, having to go through a proper KYC, like know your customer, submit your ID. I mean, if you're going to go to a bank and open a bank account, they will ask you for a bunch of documents.
Yes.
Either physically or you send them digitally. That's not the case of crypto. Now it depends, again, where and what.
Sure.
So this kind of freedom, it has been interesting, but at the same time, it was massively exploited. And basically, all these has created this kind of ground that, yes, on the one hand, crypto can make you rich if you're also lucky.
Yeah.
Because also bear in mind that all of this is also a psychological dimension of people who want to get rich quickly and do it in a very fast forward way. But I think at the same time, it's also about the dynamics of where the society is going. I mean, we live in times of digitalization. The new population which is coming in our world, they're going to inherit massive amounts of money. So the Gen Z or all these new generations which are out there, they are tech savvy and they are born within the digital world. So in technical terms, for them it will be so natural to live in a world where everything is digital.
Yeah.
And everything is digital, everything happening real time, everything happening instant. Yes, but if you scratch beyond the surface, there are many hidden aspects that need further consideration. So I think if I could simply summarize, I think it's about the ability to get rich, or if we put it, the opportunity to become affluent, let's put it that way. It's ability to access and succeed if you're also lucky. And also, I mean, the premise of financial inclusion. I would say these are the three main areas where I would see a connection between affluence and crypto.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And I love what you said about the younger generations there. I mean, I know that includes me, but it's interesting to hear about, we're born into the digital world and it's great because we're more tech savvy, supposedly, but it's also a little bit dangerous because that's kind of all we know, like all that the younger generations are being exposed to. And so you get a little bit like taking it for granted sort of vibes from it. So it can be a little dangerous.
If I may just give you a very brief story. It's a bit of a joke, and I'm not sidetracking a bit. I was a couple of weeks ago, I was flying back from Sydney, and I was on the plane, and I was actually reading a book, but a physical copy of a book.
Yes.
And the plane was full, really full, and you could see people listening to music or, looking on their phones and all that. And actually, the person sitting next to me, he looked at me and he said, "I'm so surprised to see someone still reading a physical copy of a book."
Yeah.
Like Kindle and all. I said, "Yes, I've got that, but it's back of what you say around, okay, maybe sometimes we need this digital detox."
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and because everything now, I mean, imagine if internet doesn't exist anymore, or there is an issue, or we lose our phones, we lose our lives. I mean, my iPhone last year was, for some reason it couldn't accept my credentials, and I had to reset it, and I was without a phone for 2 hours. I panicked because everything is there.
Yes.
From your bank accounts to the ability to authenticate and all that, everything is there. So it's
so true.
The dependency, and I think one of the key resources necessary at the moment is not going to be money or anything, it's going to be electricity.
Yes.
Because basically all of these things need electricity.
Yes. Once your laptop runs out of charge, that's it.
Exactly, that's it.
Yeah. So back onto crypto for a second. You mentioned there, the exploitation and the scams and things like that. What would you say are the biggest misconceptions that people have about cryptocurrency?
The main misconception is the fact that whenever you hear crypto, you think all about illegal activities.
Yeah.
You think that everything is illegal. You think that it's all the dark web. You think about all the scams and all that, which is true to a certain extent. And this is, I would go back to the question, to the point around that because of all this history and these pathogens, there is a massive deficit of trust in the brand around crypto, which doesn't deserve it because technology-wise is very, very good, actually. Another thing is the fact that people think that crypto is anonymous. Actually, it is pseudonymous. So basically, your activity is visible on the blockchain, probably not with your name, but definitely it is associated with a particular code, a particular elements that can identify you, and you can even connect it to a real world identity.
Wow.
Yes, there are privacy coins that are more robust, so and this could probably be used more for illicit activities. But if you go to Bitcoin or Ethereum, for example, they're very transparent, so you can see all the transactions, you can see the wallet which the funds have been sent, and behind each wallet there is normally a real person. Another thing which connects back to what I said about affluence is the fact that people think that because they get crypto, they can get rich quickly, or, pure speculation. We've seen it in the past, but that's not the case anymore. Another interesting thing is the fact that, and that is more of the philosophical discourse we discussed, is people think crypto doesn't have intrinsic value. Again, the main question is, what is value? How do you define value?
Yeah.
And also, how do you use crypto? For what kind of purposes do you use crypto? So I think the intrinsic value is also something very interesting. And basically, it's also how do you actually use it? Another thing which is very interesting is the fact that people think because they are exposed and they're active in crypto, they don't pay taxes, which is not the case.
Okay.
You have to pay taxes, and it depends on what do you actually do. Are you a crypto investor? Do you use crypto for mining or for staking? So does it mean you make profit out of it? Do you use crypto, or you receive your salary in crypto, or do you offer services then you're paid back in crypto? So all these things have tax implications, and basically bringing that into consideration, it's also quite complicated. The way you need to, file all these elements is very important. So we're now getting close to preparing for our new tax and declarations and all that. So all these activities can be taxable. So it's very, very important to remember that.
Okay, interesting. How does cryptocurrency compare, and how does cryptocurrency work compared to traditional banking methods? I know you touched on it in your definition.
Look, as I said, the premise of crypto was, let's put it simply, the premise of the initial philosophical discourse around crypto and the narrative was to destroy anything central, to destroy anything that is built by and governed by central governments, by central banks and all that. That narrative has changed a lot. Now we're more into the integration and the embracing of crypto and technology from financial institutions. So the cowboy style of let's go out there and destroy everything, it never worked and it will never work.
Yeah.
Definitely, it's still a mechanism that, and it depends if you're going to a pure decentralization. So basically, you're looking at doing activities on chain, which means on the blockchain. There, basically, you don't need a central bank or you don't need monetary policies and all that. Another important thing to remember, though, is that still you need some sort of a integration with banks because you still use fiat money. So fiat money is banks, basically. Something that is very interesting to remember, and that goes back into the lack of regulation or to the limited regulation, let's put it that way, is basically, and you agree with me that financial institutions is a massively and highly regulated industry. So basically the words compliance, the words fines because of non-compliance are very, very important.
Yes.
A very important element, which is quite scary that we've seen, is banks considering crypto exposure and activities as a massive risk. And basically what we have seen is the phenomenon of debanking. That simply means that, let's say you want to purchase some crypto and you would go to a centralized exchange and you would use your credit card and say, okay, I purchase $2,000 worth of crypto. This transaction could easily, of course, needs to be, approved, and it needs to be verified, and it needs to be cleared by the bank. This could also be a trigger that you, as a user, are a massive risk for the bank. And we have seen numerous cases of people having been locked out of their bank accounts, having banks actually not willing to serve them anymore, or having also numerous crypto ventures or blockchain ventures not being able to have a bank account or do their business because of the fact that they are being considered as a massive risk for financial institutions. Now, I think the reality is somewhere in the middle. I do appreciate that compliance is a massive topic, and because of the fact that crypto has been associated with money laundering, with terrorism financing and all that, but at the same time having a blanket approach into this, it's not working either. So sometimes I feel that banks, they prefer to say, all right, crypto, red flag, I don't want to do anything with it, so anything that comes to me, it's blocked. At the same time, that basically stifles innovation as well.
Yeah.
So definitely I would say regulation, it's the most important thing that needs to happen. There are some movements around the globe, especially in the European Union with MiCA. And also now with the new administration in the US, we see some sort of a more of a liberal way of approaching crypto. Here in Australia, we are working towards that direction, but we don't really have a pure cryptocurrencies or digital assets regime at the moment.
Right.
We are working towards that direction because I think also what regulation will bring, it will bring trust, it will bring consistency, and it will also bring a proper understanding of how do you actually deal with this particular type of asset. Because also bear in mind that because crypto is a virtual currency or a digital asset, what is also important to remember is that the way you code a particular coin or a token, that can have implications on how this one is perceived by regulation. So for example, if you have, let's say, Bitcoin can be used as a medium of exchange. So basically, buy something. So this is a payment scheme. But if you would use Bitcoin, the same coin, as a store of value, that means that this is an investment.
Okay, yeah.
If you use, let's say, Ethereum to stake on the network, that means you are expecting a return on investment, which is a financial product.
Yeah.
So these has implications on how these are regulated. So you see where the complexity is heading. You start from a simple coin, but the way you code it and the way you perceive it, and you can have a coin with multiple functionalities at the same time. That's why consistency is very important here as well.
Wow.
And because people are actually using it, and now you see institutions are actually using it. And basically, the other misconception is that people think crypto will die. It's not going to die. It's just going to change and evolve.
Yeah.
You need a proper regulatory and policy framework to ensure that, okay, when we say asset, that's what we mean. When we say digital asset, that's what we mean. When we say this function, that's what we mean. When we say that this is forming this kind of function, that's how it's regulated. So consistency and clarity is very important, primarily because you want to protect the population, basically.
Yeah, sure. That's fascinating. I like that you said it's not going to die.
No, it's not. It's going to. I think it's going to evolve, and we have seen this kind of evolution. I mean, even the fact now that you see major financial institutions embracing crypto. I was reading in the news the other day that there is a company now that they would be offering crypto collateralized loans, or you see the Bitcoin or Ethereum ETFs. So
yeah,
it's by default that. And that goes back maybe to the philosophical discussion that a tool that was meant to destroy centralization, now it's being integrated within centralization. So these kind of conflicting narratives. But for me, crypto is here to stay, but probably not in the way that we have seen it so far.
Yeah,
let's
makes
put it that
sense.
way.
Crypto is here to stay. Great. I have a few slightly more simple questions for you, so maybe we can smash through them.
Sure.
Because you mentioned people going into a centralized place and saying, I want $2,000 of Bitcoin or whatever. How would an individual get a cryptocurrency if I wanted to get something right now?
The most obvious and common way was to go through a crypto exchange. I'm sure you've heard about Coinbase, Binance, Kraken. There you would basically go. You have it's basically your crypto bank account. Let's put it that way, where you have to go through a rigorous process of opening an account with them, giving your credentials, your documents, and all that. Basically, they do this kind of due diligence, which in the past it was very elusive, but now they actually have to do it. And basically, you exchange directly to your local currency. Now, things have changed a lot because now the interfaces are much more friendly. They're less complicated. They basically got their own exchange wallets because you need to store crypto somewhere. So basically, you've got the exchange wallets there as well. Or you can also transfer it to your own private wallet for more control. That's let's say the most common way of doing that.
Yeah.
Probably you've seen around crypto ATMs, which is an emerging trend where you can go dispose, insert cash, and basically get crypto to your wallet, or basically you print the particular code and you just transfer it to your wallet. Because let's not forget that these coins are not in your wallet. Basically, what you have in your wallet is a code, which is a private key that allows you to unlock your account and connect with the coins. Basically, the coins live on the blockchain.
Yeah.
And if I can give a quick analogy of what a private and public key is, think about your email and password. Normally, everyone could have your email to send you an email, but you are only the one who has the private key, which is a password, to make sure you go to the Gmail, to Outlook and all that, get into your inbox and read your email.
Yeah.
So basically, technically, anyone can have your public key, which is the particular, let's say, address of your wallet, to send you funds, but you have the private key, which it belongs to you only, and that you are able to go there and unlock and access it.
Sure.
And you have seen cases in the past of people losing their keys, and it's almost technically impossible to get them back.
Yeah.
Of course, now centralized exchanges have issues in terms of they are probably more prone to cybersecurity. They are also, the fact that they are regulated. So it depends also how technically savvy or how, privacy conscious you are. You may want to go to more decentralized exchanges. Basically, it's more of a more peer-to-peer approach, which also have issues in relation to the way you would actually utilize crypto. But then you may buy directly, so basically trade. And that would say it's more around how, if you want to be a trader. There are also people who want to receive their salaries or, in crypto, or offer services like consultants and receive the payments in crypto. Also, you may want to do mining or staking. Basically, mining means you contribute to a network, particularly the Bitcoin, or if you want to do staking, it means you actually invest money on a network to be able to, and this allows you to be able to verify transactions. That is more of a complicated process. You can also receive crypto through airdrops. These are more, think of them as free distributions of coins to promote a new project. But I would say the most obvious one would be to go to a crypto exchange.
Sure.
And there be also, for people who are listening to us, be very mindful to read the fine print, because there are many differences between a centralized crypto exchange, a decentralized crypto exchange, a cold wallet, a hot wallet. There are many differences, and basically each one of these differences can be pivotal in what does it allow you to do, and also what kind of responsibilities and let's say rights you have.
Sure. You kind of mentioned this then, but how would you say people use cryptocurrency? What are the most popular uses?
Look, I would say the most popular one is investment. Basically, they would invest in different types of tokens.
Yep.
Another one would be to use it for daily transactions. However, that's not a very popular one. And you probably have heard that El Salvador had actually passed a law to make sure that Bitcoin was a legal tender. Basically, it was equal to fiat currency. But because El Salvador was in such a massive issue of its finances, IMF came and said, if you want my help, you need to make sure that this law is abolished. So you see the kind of geopolitical dynamics here.
Yeah.
And that was actually meant to happen. And I have commented on that a lot, that these kind of experiments are really detrimental. And we can discuss that at later if you want, or some other time. But I would say investment, payments, these are the main two ways. And of course, if you're more complicated, you can do the mining, as I said, the staking. But mainly, these would be the ones that people would use crypto for. Mostly, I would say, as an investment and store of value.
That's definitely what I've heard of it being used as, so that would make sense. So can you tell us where and how is cryptocurrency stored?
All right. So cryptocurrencies, you need a wallet.
Yeah.
Which is called the digital wallet. Now, these kind of wallets, as I said, they are different in types, and they are different in the ways that, let's say, they operate. So basically, the safest way would be, one of the most common ways to be is to have a centralized wallet, which actually belongs to a centralized exchange. Okay. These are all hot wallets because they're connected to the internet. Of course, the difficulty here is the fact that you probably don't have full ownership of the wallet, because part of your credentials are stored into the central exchange, and this can have a couple of issues, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
There are also the cold wallets, which I would say they're more for more sophisticated holders or investors, where basically what you would be doing there is that this wallet is not connected on the internet. It's basically a hardware. It's more secure against online threats, and basically you could connect this to the internet only when you want to make a transaction.
Okay.
So, and as I said before, it's really important to understand the difference between a hot wallet, a cold wallet, what kind of rights and responsibilities does it give you, because it's also a different way that you would probably be protected in case something happens.
Yeah.
And there are different types of wallets, so it's also very important to understand. Some of them operate on a mobile interface, others would operate on a web interface. It's also critical to remember that make sure you go to very, very prestigious and trustworthy providers. So do your research. And that's something I want to clearly mention for everything in relation to crypto, but not only do your own research.
Yes.
We can all give insight, we can all give advice, but do your own research across anything. And then, as I said, you've got the cold wallets, which basically they are more secure because they are physical devices. They store your private keys, and you connect them on the computer whenever you want to make a transaction.
Makes sense. Interesting. Definitely the key takeaway is do your research.
Yes. And as I mentioned, and I would like to remind your listeners on that, the audience, the coins themselves are not actually stored on the wallet. They live on the blockchain, but your wallet is the one that gives you control over them and access to them.
Right.
Yeah, that's very important to remember.
Yeah,
that's sense. Why the public and the private key are critical.
Okay. So can you tell us a bit about why cryptocurrency has been such a popular avenue for investing?
As I mentioned before, the first misconception around the fact that you can actually get rich very quickly has been a pivotal reason behind that, especially during bull markets, basically when things are really going very well. And, we've got the bear and the bull markets that are more cyclical. So this kind of explosive growth, it's an interesting one, but history has also shown that because growth has been explosive, it doesn't mean it's actually sustainable and continuing. I think also what I mentioned before around the accessibility factor, that basically people can basically just do it so easy and get access to this so easy. It's another reason that allows them basically to do that on a 24/7, 365.
Yeah.
And it's also an interesting one. The fact that it's about the ownership and the control, and basically the fact that you don't need a bank, or you can have access to your funds and all that, it's also an interesting thing. And also I think, and I have seen that people simply are curious. The notion of the fear of missing out.
Yeah.
But I must say that's also a misconception, because it's never late. You can always go and explore and experiment.
Yeah.
And that goes back, I think, into the investing side around what kind of investor you are, what are you looking for, how do you perceive money, how do you see your investment ethos, are you a mature investor, do you simply are looking for a quick win?
Yep.
These are all questions that are really, really important as part of your investment portfolio and investment ethos. I would say I would really highlight that word.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. And now my next question for you is probably what most people are familiar with, which is about crypto scams. Crypto scams have kind of garnered more attention from the public than actual cryptocurrency itself and how to use it. Why do you think that crypto scams are so notorious?
It's a very good question. And I think the main reason behind that is definitely both lack of regulation, but also lack of education.
Yeah.
Scams in general are mounting, they are accelerating, and especially now with all these Gen AI capabilities, we see also a new, let's say, era of scams around the imposter scams, the deep fakes and all that. I would say crypto has mostly been associated with specific types of scams, such as the romance scam or the pig butchering, or the even scams which are related to work scams, basically. And I was doing some research on that, where I published a piece last year on the work scams. Basically, they would tell you, okay, in order for your application to proceed, please send this amount of money, crypto, to this particular account as a condition.
Yeah.
Or purchase this particular computer using crypto and all these kind of things. The pig butchering ones are also very complicated, because they are actually built on a long-lasting relationship. So basically the scammer ensures that there is a relationship established with the victim, which starts initially and say, okay, invest $1,000 there. You would see that the money is there, it's growing. So it creates this kind of notion that, yes, things are actually professional. They may even be cloning a particular website of a bank or a particular financial institution. They may be creating fake accounts, which they look perfectly normal. And basically with the next moment you would go and check your balance, nothing is there. So it's built on this kind of psychological need to establish wealth.
Yeah.
And I would say then the romance scams, these are really, really interesting, because they live also on social media.
Yes.
And that also shows very, very much how people nowadays are feeling so lonely, and how people are actually vulnerable and susceptible to big words and promises.
Yeah.
And what really makes me really sad is listening to many stories of people losing their fortunes, losing their money, being scammed. But also it tells me that people are lacking common sense.
Yeah.
I mean, how on earth would you go and invest all your savings on crypto because someone told you, or because you read something somewhere? So for me, and I'm sure you're probably going to ask me this question, how to protect yourself.
Yeah.
Have common sense. Do your homework. Think logically. Sometimes I'm saying, and I say that to my students, I say that to people that I talk to, if something looks perfectly good, it's probably fake.
It's kind of like if something seems too good to be true, it probably is.
Exactly. So look into reputable platforms. Do your research. Everybody can give you opinions, but do your own research. Understand what is behind. Start small. I mean, if you can't afford it, don't even think about it.
Yeah.
And I mean, talk to your bank. Beware of the scams. Keep yourself alert. Look, we are in times, and I'll say that very bluntly, that everything in life now is by default has the potential to be hacked, has the potential to be cyber attacked. So we need to be vigilant. I'm sure all of us at some point will experience some sort of a cyber attack or some sort of a hacking or some sort, hopefully not to the extent that it would cause us issues.
Yeah.
But you've seen, for example, how many people have been hacked on Instagram, how
So
many accounts and all these kind of things, impersonation. Actually, impersonation, imposter scams, and particularly the ones that they can replicate voice. Voice scams, it's going to be a massive one, especially due to deep fakes.
Yeah.
So basically receiving a call, oh, your daughter, blah, blah, blah. You're even listening to your daughter screaming at the back. I actually was reading an article on the Wall Street Journal about this a couple of days ago, or, calling you and say, I'm from this kind of bank and blah, blah, blah. They even sent you a website, which is actually a clone of a bank. So do your due diligence and also be alert. Think critically, because now the idea of scams is not to target only your financials or your personal information, is to target your psychology and your personality.
Yes.
And these are the most difficult ones to hack, if I can use that word, but these are also the most vulnerable ones to be exploited.
Yeah. It is so interesting now, like with the rise of AI and everything, it's so much easier for people to replicate other people's voices. You see people like
3 seconds, that's what you need.
Yeah.
3 seconds and basically the AI can replicate your voice for as long as it wants.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good message for people to do their due diligence.
Yes.
If something's recreating the voice of somebody, you really have to think, would that person actually do that? Yeah. Just call them.
Yes.
Be like, what's happening?
Think logically.
Yeah.
Think logically.
Wow. So I want to move on now to our practices and habits sections. Is there a habit that you would recommend people practicing if they're investing in cryptocurrency?
The first habit is to be informed. Is to do their own research and read using reputable information. Also, make sure that whenever they want to invest or in whichever kind of venture they want to be exposed to, they need to do their due diligence. And the most, let's say, promising or the most serious ones would have all the necessary information publicly available for people to look at.
Sure.
Talk to experts, talk to your accountant, talk to your banker. There is nothing wrong with that because they need to know. Talk to your lawyer. Because you never know, and people need to know in case you are in trouble.
Yes.
Debanking, as I said, is a very common topic, and this is going to actually get worse. Because actually, banks, the only thing that they definitely want to avoid lack of not being compliant. But also allow time to understand. And sometimes it's good not to be driven by FOMO or by the hype.
Yeah.
And I must say that majority of investors so far have been driven a lot by hype. And as you probably can see, one of the things that crypto is very susceptible to is externalities. So basically news can bring the value of crypto up or bring it completely down. You see some announcements from the US administration or from the European administration. They can change things directly. I'm sure now with tariffs, there's going to be also some potential correlations with crypto. So, make sure you've got a strategy. That's really important. You're not going for the one-off, you're going for the long term. And that goes back into your investment ethos, I would say. And also check history, check the market, read, listen to analysts. There is a lot of podcasts out there. Many of them are fluff, but some of them are very, very interesting. So this is part of actually knowing which voices to trust.
Yeah. And
talk to experts. Like an influencer on Instagram is not a financial advisor.
Yeah.
So talk to real experts. And it doesn't mean because, a basketball player in the US or, a famous singer has bought crypto or has bought NFTs, you need to do the same.
No. It's like a trend. You don't want to follow the trend. You want to have your own individual strategy.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Do you find that there's any challenges that people face when they're, trying to do the right thing and trying to do their research?
Well, the main challenge is that people are in general impatient. People are generally greedy. People tend to look at the tree instead of the forest. People are not disciplined, I must say, and especially the young population is not disciplined at all, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And because of the fact that we are living times of a labyrinth of information, of massive amounts of information, it's really important to ensure that you clear the good stuff from the bad stuff, if I put it that way. So make sure you know which are your trusted sources, making sure you know who are the people to talk to. Read. There is so many real experts and not fake experts out there. So really do your research, but be both diligent, but also allow time. Sometimes being let's say the at the forefront is not a good advice.
Don't rush into things. No, absolutely. So moving on now to our open mic section, this is your chance to talk about anything you're passionate about or anything you want to promote. It doesn't have to be related to our discussion so far, but it can be. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not good at marketing myself at all. The only thing I'd like to mention is that currently with a colleague of mine from Switzerland, we're in the process of finalizing an edited book on FinTech. It is a research handbook where we have invited international thought leaders to contribute with different pieces in relation to FinTech innovation. And I think this time the book is quite timely because the FinTech space is moving very quickly and it's evolving. So we felt that there was a need to revisit, reconfigure, and maybe reshape traditional narratives around FinTech and see what are also the latest trends. And going back to the multidisciplinarity, that book particularly also encapsulates this kind of multidisciplinarity. So we're in the process of finalizing the whole manuscript. So hopefully it will be out, published by the end of the year.
Great. And if you have any links for our listeners, I can definitely add that to the show notes if there's any more information about the book.
Thank you.
And speaking of, if our listeners want to find out some more about you or about your work, where should they go?
Well, if you Google my name, you'll find lots of things about me.
Yep.
I would say LinkedIn is number one in terms of connecting or seeing because I post also regularly about different topics.
Yeah.
The Swinburne website has a page of me which has also my contact details there.
Great.
Email is the only means of communication and the most secure one.
Yeah.
But if people can if you can Google my name, they can find a lot of things about me and my activities and my videos and some media that I've done in the past, and also all the research which is out there.
Great. Research, fantastic. So I will get all of those links added to the show notes for our listeners so that they can check on those. But thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for honoring me.
I have certainly learnt a lot from you, and I'm sure our audience has too. It's such a complicated topic, so it's great to have somebody be able to explain and just listen along. So to our audience, thank you for tuning in, and we will catch you in the next episode.
You've been listening to Wealth Pathways, the Affluence Science Insights Podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. More episodes are available from 10 life management perspectives and can be found by searching LMSL on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and other podcasting apps available on your devices. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, share, and subscribe to our channel so that other people can find it and we can continue to provide quality content. More of our work can be found on our website at affluence.lifemanagementsciencelabs.com, where you can join our movement. I'm Marie Stella. Thanks for tuning in.